and they can't prove I did.
Missouri, just because he wanted to party. Something's not adding up.
I've spent 27 and a half years in prison. I've had my whole life stolen from me. Is it right? Is it fair? No, it's not.
The man who intentionally caused the Great Flood of 1993 to keep his wife far from him while he partied. James Robert Scott, an American man, was found guilty of deliberately causing the devastating Great Flood of 1993 in West Quincy, Missouri. This flood resulted in extensive flooding of the Mississippi River and led to significant damages. Currently serving a 20-life sentence in a Missouri prison, Scott's actions had far-reaching consequences. The Great Flood of 1993, which occurred from April to October, affected the Midwestern United States, particularly the Mississippi and Missouri rivers and their tributaries. It was one of the most costly and catastrophic floods in American history, causing around $15 billion in damages, equivalent to approximately $27 billion in 2021. The flooded area covered about 30,000 square miles within a larger hydrographic basin spanning 745 miles in length and 435 miles in width, totaling approximately 320,000 square miles. Scott, who grew up in Quincy, Illinois, had a criminal record with multiple arrests, including 2 for arson and others for minor burglaries. In 1982, he set fire to Webster Elementary School in Quincy, and in 1998, he committed more fires and destroyed a garage, resulting in a 7-year prison sentence. After his release in 1993, following the completion of his prison term for the 1988 incident, Scott spent most nights heavily drinking while working at a Burger King in Quincy. He lived with his wife Susie in the nearby town of Fowler. During the Mississippi River flooding in 1993, Scott, along with many other Quincy and Hannibal residents, worked on repairing the West Quincy levee throughout mid-July. By July 16th, the river had stopped rising and had receded 1.51 feet below the levee. However, on that night, the levee suddenly collapsed, leading to a burst of water through its main stem. This flood affected 14,000 acres on the Missouri side of the river, causing substantial damage, including a fire resulting from a barge crashing into a petrol station. The flood wreaked havoc on the region, destroying all the bridges within a 200-mile span over the river. This left many Missourians with limited transportation options, requiring them to drive long distances, use ferries, or fly to reach the other side of the river. The Bayview Bridge, a crucial bridge, remained closed for 71 days. Numerous businesses in West Quincy suffered damage, and most of them never reopened. Scott claimed that he noticed a weak spot on the levee and attempted to reinforce it with extra sandbags. He then left briefly to have a drink, but returned to find that the levee had slipped. He assisted the Coast Guard in loading boats during the flooding. This account was reiterated in a subsequent interview at his house, which aired after his arrest. The authorities, along with federal investigators, collaborated to probe the incident. Eventually, they discovered information from Joe Flax, an old friend of Scott's, who revealed that Scott had intentionally breached the levee to strand his wife on the Missouri side of the river. Scott wanted freedom to indulge in partying, fishing, and potentially having an affair. Other witnesses confirmed Scott's boasting about breaking the levee during a post-flood party. In November 1994, Scott was brought to trial in Missouri based on this evidence. Scott faced prosecution under a 1979 Missouri law that deemed it a crime to deliberately cause a catastrophe. The prosecution argued that Scott removed or cut the plastic sheets protecting the levee, enabling the water to flow in after digging through the sand. The defense relied heavily on soil science experts who testified that the levee's collapse was due to natural causes. However, the prosecution presented multiple witnesses who claimed to have overheard Scott bragging about breaking the levee and highlighted inconsistencies in his testimony. Following the trial, Scott appealed the conviction, and on February 25, 1997, the Missouri Court of Appeals overturned the ruling, citing prosecutorial misconduct. The defense had not been informed about 2 witnesses who allegedly heard Scott confess to intentionally breaking the levee. However, Scott was retried in 1998 and was convicted for a second time on April 30th. The original sentence of 20 life was reinstated on July 6th. During the trial, Norman Hare, the president of the Fabius River Drainage District and a major landowner on the Missouri side directly affected by the flood, testified against James Scott. Interestingly, it was revealed in a Vice News documentary that Hare received an insurance settlement for the damage to his land, despite not having flood insurance. This was possible because the flood was classified as vandalism rather than a natural disaster. Hare did not disclose his financial interest in Scott's conviction during the trial. Currently, James Scott is incarcerated at the Jefferson City Correctional Center, which is operated by the Missouri Department of Corrections. He maintains his innocence regarding the intentional breach of the levee and the resulting Great Flood of 1993. If you found this information interesting, please consider subscribing to our channel for more engaging content. Don't forget to like this video and share it with others who might find it informative. Your support is greatly appreciated.